Hello everyone! So it is a new year, and with a new year, I have a new case of art block. I've been wanting to create a lot recently, but I am kind of short on ideas, and I think the amount of pressure I have on myself for coming up with a good idea is making it even harder. So I came up with a little tool that I am going to call Roll for Inspiration. It's kind of inspired by D&D and Rolling for Initiative, but let me show you what this tool is all about and how I'm going to use it. I will also be sharing the tool with you, so let's get into it. So here I have what is essentially a prompt list with 3 separate categories: adjectives, nouns, and verbs, and about 20 words per category. What I'm going to do is roll a d20 or 20-sided die for each category, and then with the 3 words, I am going to create an art piece from it. Not sure how serious of an art piece, might be more of a sketch, might be more of a finished piece. Haven't really decided that yet. But let's go ahead and test this out and roll some dice. I'm going to say that the blue will be for adjective, the green for nouns, and the purple for verbs. So let's roll them. So it looks like I rolled 14 for adjective, which is tart, like a tart lemon. For noun, I rolled a 15, creek, like a small river. And for verb, I rolled a 3, play. So my 3 words are tart, creek, and play. Okay, so I've been spending the past few days doing some prep. First, I did a bunch of little sketches to kind of decide what I was going to do with the prompt words. This one was my husband's idea. I drew it to humor him a little bit, but I decided on something along this line, and then I went into Procreate on my iPad and did a more organized sketch, I guess, a cleaner sketch, spent some time on the anatomy, and then I transferred it to some watercolor paper. I actually did this more than once and started the painting, but I overestimated the amount of water the paper could handle, and I kind of destroyed the first attempt. So we're going to try this again today. So I think I'm going to get started on the second go. I think the first time I was a little too rushed, so I'm going to take my time and really try to enjoy the process and all of that wonderful stuff. So let's get started on the painting. Alrighty, let's hop into things, and I'll talk a little bit about why I chose this concept and how I related it to the prompts that I rolled. As a reminder, the 3 prompts were creek, sour, and play. Honestly, kind of difficult ones to pair together, and I was really quite stumped there in the beginning. I asked a few people around me what they thought I should do. For example, honestly, actually, the only person I asked was my husband. But he suggested strawberries playing in a river or a creek. And while I liked that idea, I didn't quite know how to execute it in a way that I would like. Not really sure how to personify and stylize strawberries in that way. So I decided to kind of play around with that idea a little bit. And I went a little in my comfort zone, but also challenged myself a little bit. So I decided to go with a pretty girl sitting along a creek side with some ducks, like playing with ducks. That's kind of how I incorporated play. Now, I challenged myself here by picking a pose that I've never done before. And honestly, that is the part of the sketch that took me the longest, was trying to get that pose to look somewhat natural. anatomy is kind of difficult. So that is how I got Play and Creek. Creek was easy just to fit in as the setting. Now for Sour, I didn't quite know how to incorporate that, but I decided to have this girl with a basket of sour fruits. Probably something along the lines of like a Granny Smith apple. I also chose a color palette that is reminiscent of different citrus fruits. So I guess that's kind of what I mean with it doesn't have to be fully literal, but what those prompts remind me of. And really that's what they're supposed to do. They're just supposed to give me a little burst of inspiration and kind of a jumping off point. On another note, I do want to give a quick apology. My camera autofocus was going a little haywire, and I feel like it's a little more noticeable in these clips than it has been in the past. Not quite sure why that's the case, but hopefully in the future I can figure out how to more finely tune the autofocus. But that's also one of the downsides to painting and filming at the same time. It's a little bit of a struggle to multitask and do well with both things. But anyways, I digress. I do also want to talk a little bit about inspiration in art and kind of how I've been feeling surrounding some of those things recently, and also kind of how it relates to content creation and social media. It's honestly been something that's been on my mind a lot lately, and I want to share my thoughts with you. This is probably going to be a little rambly, a little stream of thought, but think of it as me sharing my mostly unedited, unfiltered thoughts. I feel like for a good chunk of my life, at least kind of after early childhood, probably around the time I hit late middle school, early high school, I started struggling to know what to draw and what to paint. I didn't lack inspiration and motivation to do these things, but I think I've always put a large amount of pressure for myself to have a good idea. I'd look at all these other artists' work and go, wow, how did they even think of that? And I felt a little stunted creatively. And I think some of it is the pressure, and some of it was also limiting my work to what I felt capable of and kind of staying in the safe zone. Like, what can I do that doesn't involve hands and a background and anything that will be frustrating or challenging? As I got older, I was able to push past that a little bit more, but I've been feeling myself facing that a little bit more lately. I think some of this has to do with sharing work online, and I think pretty much anyone who shares their artwork publicly probably feels this, but there is an added pressure that what you do not just has to be good, but has to be an interesting idea or a different idea. It just feels like you can't just create whatever. And while you totally can, I think that it kind of creates a mental block, or at least it does for me. And the more I try to think of something or come up with the right or the perfect idea, the more difficult that becomes. It's honestly not my favorite thing. I've been trying to battle this a little bit lately, but even with sketching sometimes, I don't even know where to start. It kind of takes a second to get in the flow. And there's certain habits that I think have also contributed to this, like having to find the right reference photo and trying to, have things be aesthetic. And I think it's something I'm slowly growing out of. I'm slowly becoming a little bit better at, but trying to not worry so much about that and really start off my work with play. It's something that's a little tricky, but not worrying if something looks a little extra goofy or weird. sometimes those things later turn into inspiration or ideas for more polished work. But anyways, I feel like knowing that my art is going to be perceived definitely kind of changes my approach. I'm trying to do more work outside of stuff that I film, outside of stuff that I post. And honestly, that's sometimes when I have the most fun with what I'm doing. Because I don't feel a time crunch, I don't feel that extra pressure. But it's also this weird feeling of like, if I'm doing something and it turns out good, I almost feel like it's wasted that I didn't like share it or get the footage. And that's not necessarily how I want to feel. I don't know, I've been having a lot of conflicting feelings about how I want to approach art in the future. I went for a long time wanting to go professional and do art full time and having my art business be full time, but I've kind of changed my mind, or at least for now. It might still be something I pursue in the future, but having my artwork not be tied to money making, I think helps give me a little bit more wiggle room for what I create too. Like, I already have a hard time with just the pressure for posting. I can't imagine also having the added pressure of financial stability on what I create. And this year, I really want to focus on enjoyment, finding kind of that spark that I had as a kid, just creating out of excitement, out of joy, out of play, and really just trying to have fun with it, while also kind of developing my style and my skill set. And I really don't want social media to limit what I create. I want to continue sharing, but I think I want to change how I share. I already kind of ignored Instagram a lot last year. Some of it being the algorithm, but also just the change in the platform and AI. And honestly, I have some big opinions on Instagram. Let me know if you want me to share those later on, but I focused a lot more on YouTube last year. And this year, I think I want to continue focusing on YouTube, but rather than focusing on a following or building a business, I really want to focus on community. I really miss the days of like DeviantArt and Tumblr where people just really connected. And I know that still happens on current social media platforms, but I think some of that has been watered down partially just by how frustrated everyone is. And so I think this year I want to continue to find that balance. Anyways, to tie things back to the theme of this video and to inspiration, these are just all things I'm considering and trying to not let get in the way of creating and having fun. That's kind of why I created this tool. It was actually something that was at the recommendation of my husband. It was back when I was doing the 3-color challenge, and he's like, why don't you roll dice to choose colors? And I thought, wow, that's actually a really good idea, but what if I do prompts instead? And reached out to my good friends and had people submit words. And honestly, I think I'm going to be using this tool a lot, and I'll also be sharing it with you all so you can have access to it as well, or at least, access to the idea. It kind of gives me the opportunity to approach ideas a little differently. And honestly, I don't think I would have come up with this exact painting on my own. Having those words to kind of guide me and jump off from was honestly really fun, even though it was a little challenging at first. I guess what I'm trying to say is I really enjoyed this little creative practice, and I think that this is a tool that I'm going to continue using. Plus, I always enjoy a good opportunity to roll some dice. I'm going to let you enjoy the rest of the process and these last little colored pencil details I'm doing here, and I'll hop back in at the end. Alright, so here is the final result. I think it turned out pretty good, and it was really a great start to the year artistically. I'd love to know what you think. I'd also love to know your thoughts on inspiration and what drives you creatively. And I'd also love any feedback or ideas for things you'd like to see in future videos. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.